Hey folks, Taylor here. On today's show, we're talking U.S. soccer presidential elections. Sunil Gulati isn't running, but Kathy Carter definitely is. We preview the MLS Cup Final by taking a detailed look at both Toronto and Seattle and giving out some specific predictions. And as ever, we close with scouting reports. Before that, I also wanted to let you know that today's show is brought to you by SeatGeek, the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated and confusing, but there is a better way to buy with SeatGeek. Whether you're searching for a last-minute deal, planning a night out, or need to find the perfect gift, SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices. Best of all, our listeners can get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code TSS today. That's promo code TSS for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Now on with today's show.
And welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's making me feel underdressed. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Not my intention, but certainly the result.
I'm in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And you are wearing a tie.
Yeah.
And a vest and a shirt. Mm-hmm. I've got to say, looking good.
As Proposition Joe once said, Daryl Grove, look the part, be the part.
Well, what part are you after? Are you dressing to be US soccer president, for example? Because I can't help noticing that you coming into the office all nicely dressed coincides with Sunil Gulati announcing he will not stand for re-election.
That's all the job requires, right? Like, we usually don't wear ties in the office, so I figured if I wear a tie, then I'm good to go. I can throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
No, it really is. It is a thing that I started doing in Turkey when I really did not want to go into work. And it was sort of like, I'm going to dress up because I feel like when I'm dressed up, I'm more inclined to be like, I am working and I'm being productive. There's something about typing on a keyboard while you're wearing a tie, when like you're doing something you want to be doing, that makes you feel very official.
Okay, but does that mean that that's how you feel about coming to talk to me?
It felt that way this morning when I woke up, and I was like, I still have to watch a whole bunch of college soccer, and I still have to do a lot of other research because I recorded another show today.
So you had a long day ahead of you, so you dressed for the day.
That is exactly what happened.
Success,
it was basically I woke up and took the dogs out, and usually that's enough to get me going, and I got back, and I was like, I need more coffee and more sleep. And so then I started to get ready. I was like, I'm going to wear a tie. It's going to make me feel official.
Well, you're looking good.
Indeed.
We're going to do the MLS Cup preview later in the show. I always want to say MLS Cup Final, but it's really MLS Cup preview. But first, we have got to talk about, you're thinking about that, aren't you?
It really is, isn't it? Gosh,
Yep.
I've been calling it MLS Cup Final, yeah. I think that's what I have on my notes.
I'd say both is good. Both is good. How about both are good?
Sure.
How about we talk about Sunil Gulati's announcement last night that he will not stand, after 12 years as US soccer president, he will not stand for re-election. Grant Wall, I think doing some good journalistic work, kind of leaked this out the day before, and then it seems that there's some sort of like hastily arranged teleconference with journalists, is what I can gather, where Gulati essentially said, yep, that's it. I'm definitely not running. I've got a couple of quotes if you don't mind hearing them.
Sure, but my guess is that your understanding is correct, that basically it kind of leaked out a little bit. I'm not sure how, but then he started to get
Grandma's got, people he can call and talk to. He gets
true.
from news.
True. Yeah. It's just weird that, like, maybe I guess that probably implies that Sunil Gulati informed other people who wouldn't be running, somebody in there, notified.
Word got around.
But I'm guessing that then a bunch of people called Sunil Gulati to the point where he was like, all right, fine, I'll just do a call real fast. Let's get this dealt with.
And here's the sort of the perfect quote that sort of sums up Gulati's decision. He says, look, the general perception in the soccer community versus the people who vote in elections may be different right now. So that means that he thinks he could have won this election. He could have got the various state representatives to vote for him because he has, he's got all those connections, all those contacts. He probably has had some people say, yeah, I'm going to vote for you. But the other people like us or, the general public don't vote. But he sees that even if he could win the election, it would not be good for US soccer to have a man that people don't want to be the president be the president.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes. I really do, because there's lots of other kind of like wrinkles to this entire equation that
we'll get to those.
But I still think you're right, though, that like at the end of the day, like even with us like reading about it and talking to people about it, it still is a little bit murky about how you get elected U.S. soccer president. And so I do think
you go back, listen to my show with George. We really did go through how it all works. But it's essentially the public can't vote, the soccer administrators and coaches
And this
vote.
is what I mean, though. But there's no sort of like, oh, this is who they voted for, and it's all so there's sort of no way of really knowing what the ramifications are. and if there are people who are like Sunil Gulati out, so I think instead it would have been a very easy one for him to run again and probably win, because I think a lot of people would have been like, status quo, it's fine. Who's gonna I'm not gonna get a bunch of phone calls to my DC office.
But there would have been public uproar,
or New York office,
we would have done a podcast the day after, kind of lamenting the fact that Gulati was re-elected. So for all his faults, then we've talked about them at length on various shows ever since October 10th. It is a man who has at least seen the public mood and decided it's not a good look for US soccer for me to run again.
Ish.
Okay. Yes. Please explain. I think I know where you're going. But
well, it's essentially that, yes, he's announced he's not going to run again, but elections aren't until February, so obviously he'll be the president until then. But then it sounds like he has sort of either negotiated or made clear that he expects to be involved in certain aspects of the game going forward, specifically that bid for 2026. And it seems like he wants to see that out.
I mean, he may as well, right, if he's already started it. And he's still on the FIFA Council. He still has a seat on the FIFA Council, so he's still going to be involved in the running of international soccer. So it's not, to be fair then, him not seeking re-election is not walking away from soccer. It's just walking away from being US soccer president.
No, but I think to Grant Wall's credit again, he pointed out two things that I think are worth noting. The thing that gets repeated off time and time again is that U.S. soccer president doesn't get paid. Non-paid position, non-profit, whatever. The key thing there is that his role in FIFA, though, does get paid. Yeah. That's $300,000 a year.
I think that's what I read.
And so I think that one is another like 4-year term. So he wants to see that out. But the key point that I saw that Grant Wall made is that after winning the 1994 World Cup bid and organizing everything, Alan Rothenberg got a $7 million bonus for a successful tournament. And I do wonder, that was in 94. I do wonder if Sunil Gulati maybe sees, if we have this tournament, it's going to be successful because it will be successful. Maybe I make some money on the end of it too.
Here's where you and I disagree. I genuinely think Sunil Gulati is committed to the idea of growing soccer in the United States. And he wants to bring the World Cup to the United States because he sees that as a good in and of itself. I would never say that he's in it only for the money.
No, and I'm not saying only. That's the key thing. I'm saying, that's certainly a part of it. Things can be two things. You can want to grow the sport and want it to take hold in the United States, but you can also want to be compensated for it. And I think if you look at his record, it is a lot of good stuff and some very bad stuff. And I think one of the things that he probably sees as a black mark on his resume is the way the 2022 bid went and losing out to Qatar, where I think a lot of people thought that was definitely going to be the U.S. winning that one. And I wonder if maybe that's also part of it, too, is that he feels
just to make up for it, getting 2026 done.
So I want to get this one done.
It's like a legacy sort of. When people look back and read the Wikipedia entry for Sunil Gulati, they'll be like, he got the 2026 World Cup, not he failed to get the 2022
exactly.
World Cup. Yeah. All right, so let's not you Googleize him. Now. We could maybe look back on his whole presidency maybe some other time. The other thing that Grant Wall reported before the Gulati news became official was that Gulati was considering not running and instead supporting Kathy Carter, who's the current president of Soccer United Marketing. And not long after the Gulati announcement, we also get, actually I don't know the timeline, but roughly the same time as Gulati stepping down, we get the announcement that Kathy Carter is running for US soccer president. There's already a PDF.
It was enough time, it was a close enough time period that it's not a coincidence.
Yes,
is what I would say.
Yeah. And it seems like she is Gulati's candidate, and I read a few things that she's run at the encouragement of Don Garber. So Kathy Carter, I read her materials. I know you did as well. There's nothing really specific in there, but there's definitely a feeling that she is similar to Gulati in that she's sort of more about the business of American soccer than changing the culture.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I look at it, is that Gulati was a safe hands in terms of growing soccer as a business. Kathy Carter's safe hands in terms of growing soccer as a business, but I don't think in terms of changing the culture.
No, I guess the way I would put it, and maybe this analogy doesn't quite fit, but it feels similar to when a president has been elected, and then, run again, gotten elected. So end of their second term, they're very popular, things are going well, and their vice president runs.
Yeah. So George H.W. Bush?
Sure. Yeah. And it's when George H.W. Bush runs, and it's sort of more of the same. We're just going to keep it going. That's sort of what her announcement felt like. It was a lot of we've been gaining, but we need to gain more. We've been good, but we need to be better.
My slight problem is that that's the subtext of it. That's very easy to read, but she's not actually saying that, right?
What do you mean? How so?
Well, she's not saying hey, Gulati did a great job with growing the business of soccer. I'm going to do the same.
No, but it wasn't enough of we have been moving in the wrong direction here, or this isn't working. It felt much more like things are working, some things obviously aren't, and we're going to address those things, and we're going to keep the things that are working good. So we're going to be good across the board. It just felt very the bad won't be bad anymore, but the good will still be good, and then it will all be good. Hooray.
So can we excuse the vagueness of it because she's only just entered the race?
No.
Why not?
I mean, because I think that's not how it works. You don't get to run for president of anything, and then once you're in there, be like, "Oh, I'll figure it out." Though, like the reason why you run for something is because you have firm beliefs in how things need to be.
Yeah.
And I think you look at pretty much every candidate who was running before this announcement was made, and I think all of them, either like way outside of the box or sort of within the box, have their own ideas about how things need to be, and that can be going from promotion relegation to pay to play to how the women's teams need to be treated. I think there are lots of different ideas out there, but I think it's better to have like specific ideas, or at least one specific thing that you can kind of hang your candidacy on, as opposed to we'll figure it out when we get there. That doesn't really inspire confidence.
And just to explain to people, Soccer United marketing, I'm going to guess maybe half the people who listen will know exactly what it is, half won't be quite
I'm not entirely sure I know what it is.
So my understanding is Soccer United marketing is, a marketing group that was formed by some Major League Soccer owners in early 2000s. I want to say 2002, when MLS wasn't doing so well, doing much, much worse than it is right now. And they essentially, their big idea, which is very, very smart, especially at the time, was to get the rights to US soccer games and later on Mexican national team games and package those with Major League Soccer games and sell them all together. So essentially, if ESPN wants to broadcast the US national team, you got to broadcast Major League Soccer as well. So they packaged it all together, and I think it grew a bit to like to running some events, maybe like the Mexican team games were part of the growth of it. But essentially became a marketing group that works to market soccer in America.
And now I'm going to go a crazy route. I'm going to say, but there's a part of it to me that makes them feel a little bit like the modern version of like soccer Freemasons, where it's like, I understand you started for legitimate reasons that like were for the purpose of like helping and benefiting the world. But then all of a sudden, like, you did some nefarious things, and then maybe all of a sudden there's like conspiracy theories out there, and all of a sudden maybe you're a Nicolas Cage movie.
Are there SUM conspiracy theories?
Well, there's the whole thing about how like there's like part of the contract with U.S. Soccer is that like you have to use their services and you have to use like their providers and just little things like that like we don't know how true that is, but we don't know how not true it is.
There's also a thing of like you can start off for good reasons, as Soccer United marketing was, but the bigger you grow and the more money you're bringing in and the bigger an organization you are, the more you have to protect yourself, and suddenly you can be the bad guy, right? But I don't know enough about SUM to really like offer a full takedown. I
believe you just described every African dictator.
You saying SUM is Mugabe?
Yes.
Let's
not do that.
Let's not quite go there. So essentially, to me, Kathy Carter coming over from SUM, it really is sort of the pro-business version of soccer, where she can grow revenues and all that kind of stuff, and it can be very successful that way. But other candidates, and I would highlight, say, Eric Ronaldo specifically, it seems to be more about changing the culture of how US soccer relates to the national teams and maybe the landscape of soccer in terms of pro-rel and all that kind of stuff. So Kathy Carter doesn't seem like she's going to change any of that. She's just going to be sort of vaguely grow the game and make some more money.
And I think that's what it comes down to for me, is that when your platform is sort of like, we need to continue doing the things that have worked, even if you genuinely mean that, what that still implies is, like, I mean, you look at the way U.S. soccer is right now, and it's basically the marketing has worked. They've made a lot of money off of selling games and selling tickets.
The marketing's doing better than the actual product.
And so to me, a person who's coming in sort of with the background of like, we're going to do more marketing and sell more stuff and sell more friendlies, it's like, that's not what we need.
Yeah.
And that's where I sort of veer towards, other candidates who are out there sort of looking at the system and figuring out what can be changed for the better and what is in there that isn't working that can be removed.
So is it like some candidates are change the product? I would class Ronaldo as that, maybe Carl Martino as well. Paul Lapointe seems to be very into that. And then other candidates, specifically Kathy Carter and it would have been Sunil Gulati, are more about market the product better.
I think so.
Right? And so if it comes down to a choice between those two, I'm going to lean more to the side that is about improving the product.
I think so. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah.
All right. So it's worth remembering this. Like, maybe keep an eye on Kathy Carter, because she may have more specifics as we get towards February. But she's also, weirdly, I don't want to say the favourite, because Gulati was the favourite, right? Because we assume he had some votes locked up. What's really interesting is how many of those votes that Gulati had locked up to make him kind of the favourite among the voters, not among the public. How many of those votes then sort of immediately get sort of ported over to Kathy Carter at Gulati and Garber's sort of suggestion to the various voters.
And this is
we don't know is the answer.
Well, this is what frustrates me, I think, at the end of the day, is that like the cynicism that has crept into my mind because of the state of U.S. soccer. That like I would like to think that it's Sunil Gulati saying, you know what, I talked to some people, I did some exploratory campaigns, people are really upset with this, and it's not right for me to continue. I really want that to be the case. What I fear is the case is after the Trinidad game, he said, people are really mad. This isn't working. I'm going to get criticized every step of the way, but I want to make sure the person that comes after me is a person that is going to kind of continue things the way I've continued them, that I'll still have input, that I'll still have sway. So I'm going to wait and contact the people who have previously said they would endorse me and say, hey, I might not run, but if I don't run, who would you want to run? Would you endorse this person? And sort of built that campaign so that when he announced he wasn't running, Kathy Carter could come in and say, I am running, and magically I've got the endorsement of all of the people who endorse Sunil Gulati, and they've already written me letters of endorsement as well.
We'll find out kind of soonish. I mean, I don't think any of this has to be public knowledge, but it tends to
get out there eventually.
Tends to get out there, right? So I think, isn't it December 12th is when all the nominations have to be final? So I guess we'll find out after that. Here's my kind of nightmare scenario. It's kind of harsh because it's only soccer, right? But what if Kathy Carter is elected US Soccer president and then Sunil Gulati is made head of soccer, president of Soccer United Marketing, and we've essentially just got like a Putin-Medvedev type thing where they just kind of switch positions and it's the same, but we all just moved around a little bit?
And we're back to dictators. That's great. I mean, that is kind of what tends to happen.
How dare you? Putin was definitely democratically elected.
I mean, I'm not even specifically talking about Putin, though. That does tend to be the case that, like, when a person who's, like, really enjoying being in power is president and their time is up, suddenly they become the prime minister, and the prime minister has more power. And then suddenly the president does when they can be the president again. That's the case for a couple different countries, none of whom I really want to name because I enjoy being alive.
So we don't want that to happen to US soccer?
No.
Okay, don't Kremlinize US soccer.
Ideally not.
Yeah, if I was running against Kathy Carter, that might be my campaign slogan.
I like that because of the subtle implication that she's connected to Russia.
But also, let's give Kathy Carter a chance and see if she's got anything more of a specific platform than just I'll make soccer the number one sport in America.
That
Which
would
literally
be
is the first thing on her leaflet, right?
It sure is.
All right, so let's get to previewing MLS Cup. I'm going to call it Major League Soccer Cup.
Okay,
how about that?
That works for me.
Just to be a little bit different. But first, today's show is sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek, buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated and confusing. Emphasis on the can. It doesn't have to be. With SeatGeek, the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event, including the one where they kick footballs around.
This is very true. I'm assuming you can still get tickets to the MLS Cup Final.
The Major League Soccer Cup.
There it is. Even though it is completely sold out, I bet there are tickets available, and I bet they're very expensive.
If you're willing to wear gloves and a hat and a scarf.
This is true.
It's going to be cold in Toronto on Saturday.
But that is one of the advantages of SeatGeek, is that if you've missed the window to get tickets, if there's a game you really want to go to or a concert or stand-up show or whatever, you can always use SeatGeek just to see, because very high price or high energy events, you can definitely still find them, as I did, because I was looking at different things. This evening, I will probably not be attending since tip-off is in an hour and 15 minutes. Texas comes to town to play Virginia Commonwealth University.
Shaka Smart back in town?
Shaka Smart returns to VCU, yep.
Is this like a season warm-up type deal?
No, it's just a regular season game.
Right? Regular season game. Is it out of conference?
Yes.
I don't understand basketball conferences.
It's definitely out of conference. My guess, I think this is based on what I read previously, is that it was part of the deal for him to go sign for Texas when he left VCU. I think it was yes, you can go sign for them, but you were guaranteed, you come back and play one game.
Can Texas and VCU negotiate that?
I believe they
can. As part of the conference schedule?
I think so. Okay. It's not conference. That's the thing. It's a non-conference game. So I think when you're out of conference, you can kind of do what you want. Might be wrong there. But I think that's the same thing a lot of
It's going to be Havoc versus Havoc.
Yep.
Yeah.
I forget who has I think VCU retained the trademark on that one, even though they tried to take it.
Shaka Smart retains the Shaka Smart coaching.
Yes, but then I think every disciple of Shaka Smart has a different version of Havoc. Okay. So it's chaos and panic and everything.
Chaos, I think, was Will Wade,
I believe
the next coach, and he's since moved on somewhere. And now it's Mike Rhodes. I don't know what his version of Havoc is.
Rooney.
Kai Havertz.
Sure, yeah, there you go.
This is called Kai Havertz.
So, but that is a game that, as far as I can tell, is completely sold out, but there are tickets available on SeatGeek.
Okay.
One thing that is not sold out, because he's touring all over the place, is Jerry Seinfeld. I've been watching
Not
intermittent.
sold out?
It is not, because he's traveling everywhere except the East Coast. He's in like North Carolina and New York, I think, and that's it. And Florida on the East Coast. But
You're not coming to Virginia?
nope, but he's going everywhere else. So there are many tour dates available in 2018. I've been watching old episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm and then the new season as well.
Yeah.
And there's that season that is like kind of the unofficial Seinfeld reunion.
Yes,
and it just
yes,
reminds
yes.
me how funny Jerry Seinfeld can be. And it makes me want to see him do stand-up again.
Okay, brilliant. If you would like to use SeatGeek, here's what you do. You download the SeatGeek app and you can get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. So you download the SeatGeek app onto your phone. You enter the promo code TSS. Enter promo code TSS today. That's TSS for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase, whether it be to a basketball game or to see Jerry Seinfeld or to watch the Major League Soccer Football Cup.
So thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's program. Shall we talk about that football cup?
Yeah, let's get to MLS Cup. Okay, so we have done our homework, right? We've watched a lot of Seattle, a lot of Toronto, figured out sort of what they do, how they match up.
Wait, I watched a bunch of Colorado and D.C. Is that not what we're doing?
Yeah, we'll preview that non-existent game if you like.
Oh, boy.
So we are prepped for this game.
Yep.
We're going to have specific predictions later on. I've got a feeling it's not going to be a great game, but not because the teams play badly,
Agreed.
but because they execute their game plans correctly. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think it's especially so because both of the teams' styles sort of suit each other, but in the sense that it's not like one's wide open and one stays closed. We'll see what happens. It's sort of like they play similar styles, even if they have different approaches to those styles.
Different shapes, similar style.
And so I think off air, you correctly summarized it as it seems like it's going to be a chess game, and I think that's exactly what it's going to be. It's Greg Vanney makes a change, Schmelzer makes a change, and you see those back and forth all over the place.
I don't see so many changes as just Vanney and Schmetzer set it up.
Schmetzer, thank you.
Yeah,
I made him a Dortmund left back.
Schmelzer, yeah, the Dortmund left back. I mean, if he's coaching the team, that'll be interesting. Schmetzer and Vanney both have their system that they put out there. I don't see many in-game like adjustments in that kind of chess match, as opposed to just like the two armies of chess pieces are already arranged and just go at each other.
So, I mean, there's definitely a few subs that I could see being brought in to change it up and sort of shift things around if need be. But overall, I think, you're going to see – my guess is that you're going to see a tightly contested, low-scoring game, although I hope I'm wrong.
All right, so let's stop skirting around the vagaries and get to the specifics.
Alrighty.
Which team would you like to start with? We'll sort of get into how they play.
Let's start with the home team.
Okay.
Since they've earned it.
Toronto are hosting this. By the way, it is Saturday. It's listed as a 4 o'clock Eastern kickoff. It will not kick off at 4 o'clock.
It will not. I have concert tickets that evening, so I will not be in studio to watch that game, so there will be no immediate reaction to that game. Apologies
Sunday.
in advance.
We'll have the review out on Sunday.
Indeed.
Okay, so the home team, Toronto FC, how do they line up, Taylor?
In a 3-5-2, 5-3-2, depending on how you want to look at it. And then even there's variations in there as well.
Even the 5 is weird, right? So let's say this. It's definitely 3 centre-backs. It's definitely 2 wing-backs in Beitashaw and Morrow.
Yep.
Beitashaw on the right, Morrow on the left. Then it's definitely Michael Bradley in front of the defenders, almost on his own a lot of the time. And then there are 2 other central midfielders. The personnel could change. I mean, it's going to be Vasquez, it's going to be one of them.
Yeah.
And their positioning can change. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, but that's where, like, I think my hesitation was that when you say 3-5-2, it conjures up a specific image.
3 lines.
And doesn't, and it's more of like almost a like 3-3-2-2 or something like that.
Get complicated.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and that's the key point, as you said, is that you've got your 3 center backs, you've got your 2 attacking wing backs. Beitashaw is probably the one who does a little bit more staying back, a little bit more defensive duty. Michael Bradley in front shielding, Vasquez running around. And then the question is it Osorio or Armando Cooper?
Or Delgado.
Or Delgado,
could be any of those guys. I've got a feeling it's going to be Delgado because he's the most defensive.
Yeah.
Osorio's the more
attacking.
Sort of tricky and attacking. Cooper's the more experienced. I honestly don't know what Vanney does.
I think
it's a good suggestion of how much depth Toronto have. That's 3 guys for one spot.
And I came in here with the idea that it would be Osorio, and you talked me into the idea that it might be Delgado.
Yeah, so that means it will definitely be Cooper.
It might be. You're right. But you're right that it's like Cooper's the veteran, Osorio is the more attacking option. And then from what I've read, from what I've seen, Delgado is more the like retain possession, keep the ball moving, find spaces.
More simple.
And it seems like that's what they're going to need against Seattle, or at least going to start off with against Seattle.
Up top, obviously, it's Giovinco and it's Josie Altidore.
I've heard of both of them.
You've heard of both of them. All right, so maybe their attacking style, how do they try and get the ball to those guys?
It feels like they try any number of things because a lot of different things have worked. They scored lots of goals this season, had lots of success. That's tapered off a little bit, and I think that's because teams have found certain ways to limit the way they get the ball forward.
All right, give me some ways, though. How do they get the ball to those guys?
Number one is route one. You can go direct because it seems like what you tend to get is Giovinco dropping in on the more defensive side of the ball, Josie Altidore dropping in to link up the attack more. Yeah. And that can be dropping way back to receive the ball, turn and go at people, or it can be a big long ball out of the back. He brings it down or chests it back to an on-rushing midfielder, and they break that way.
When I picture that, I don't picture Josie versus a centre-back, like fighting for a ball that could go over the both of them and land with the other goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. I picture, like you said, Josie coming back to receive the ball. So he's almost coming towards midfield and taking it on his chest or his feet there. And when you say route one, it's more like probably Michael Bradley bringing it out of the back, trying to break the lines and get it past midfield into Josie's feet.
And I think a lot of times it's that, or it's Michael Bradley gets put under pressure, plays it out to one of the center backs who spread wide, and then they have limited options, so they hoof it long. Josie Altidore comes back, and part of the reason why I think he drops in is because then the opposition center back has to make a choice. Do I follow him and risk being pulled out of position? But if I leave him, then suddenly he's wide open to settle the ball. What if a midfielder doesn't pick him up? And that in and of itself causes problems.
And there's also the wing-backs to think about.
Then there's the wing-backs.
They're really good targets for Bradley. They're really good in terms of It's almost like there's two of them on either side sometimes. They cover so much ground up and back. Like Morrow is always back essentially as a left back when Toronto are defending. When they get forward, he's up there almost as a left winger. He scored a hat-trick not long ago. It's kind of a terrifying prospect as he's up and down that left wing.
I believe that was right around the time that one of us said they wanted him in the U.S. national team going forward. But to your point, I think a big part of that, the reason why he's able to get a hat-trick, he being Morrow, but the reason why it really helps with Toronto's attacking play is because those are their wide options. That yes, you can have certain players drift wide. I feel like we saw Vasquez do it on a number of occasions.
Well, that's because Vasquez goes everywhere.
That is true. Yeah. But so when he does that, though, if, say, Vasquez drifts and the two wingbacks stay back, now you have fewer attackers in the middle and only one out wide. It's much easier to defend. So if you get those attackers involved, and especially if you get them involved on that 2 to 3 second delay when Seattle think they're set and then the wingback comes bombing through and now you have to adjust.
The next wave.
That causes that chaos.
The next wave of wingbacks is coming for you.
Yep.
Can we talk about Vasquez for a second?
Sure.
I weirdly think he's one of the most important players.
Agreed.
Doesn't get enough headlines, mate, because Bradley obviously gets a lot of focus on him. He's going to be sort of bringing the ball out of the back. Normally the centre-backs will just let him have it in a way that frustrates US national team fans, but Bradley bringing the ball out of the back. And if he's not hitting Altidore, and if he's not going wide to the wing-backs, then usually his other option is find the feet of Vasquez because he will be showing for the ball and he'll do something clever with it. Like he can get out of it. He can get Toronto out of a tight spot, which we'll talk about Seattle in a minute. It may be Seattle putting Toronto in a tight spot.
Chuck Klosterman used to have a whole segment, chapter in his book about bands that are properly rated because everybody always wants to do underrated, overrated.
Yeah.
And I think his line was the Beatles are the best band in the world, and that's where their rating is, so they're properly rated, I think is what he, things like that. Yeah. And I feel like Vasquez used to be underrated and is now properly rated because of what Toronto have done both in the regular season and in the playoffs. I've seen a lot more think pieces about how he's the cog in the machine and he's the one that links it up and he's the one that Seattle need to worry about, and he absolutely is. So I think you're correct to spotlight him, but it seems like he is finally starting to get a little bit more credit than maybe he was getting in the past.
And to me, it's going to be about Seattle closing him down and maybe closing the wing-backs down, blocking the path to the longish ball to Josie Altidore, and then suddenly you'll have Michael Bradley with the ball at his feet, looking around, playing it to his own centre-backs. And all US national teams fans will have flashbacks and everybody will be seeing a team that's in trouble.
Yeah.
I would say.
I would say this, though. It's the problem with man-marking a player like Vasquez or attempting to shut down that one player. As you said, he is everywhere. He moves. He never stops moving. And so if you do say, you, X-player, stick to him. If it's Christian Roldan, you stick to Vasquez the whole game. Well, that can work in that you can eliminate Vasquez, but Vasquez can then eliminate a player for Seattle by just constantly taking that player out.
He'll pull Roldan out and leave a hole.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't think Seattle will do that.
So it has to be a very slow adjust and then step when the situation calls for it, but it's something that Seattle will have to figure out how to deal with.
Speaking of Seattle, should we switch to them?
Other than you hit on it
we can come back to Toronto.
Well, I just want to say really quickly the thing that you got to and then I took us back to Vasquez is you're absolutely right. That the key point there, Bradley sitting deep if you take off some of those options, he's end up forced wide, and that's probably what Toronto don't want to have happen.
The thing I read, I think we both read maybe the same thing. It was a fansided.com article, but it's a really good breakdown of Toronto's tactics against Atlanta in an MLS regular season game. Was that if you can force Michael Bradley to have to pass to his sort of wide centre-backs, Mavinga and Zavaleta, there's just no concept of him passing to Drew Moore, I guess.
Then those are sort of passing 2 yards behind him.
That's true. Then suddenly you've got the ball on the foot of very dependable centre-backs, but not the most creative players.
Correct.
And then they're sort of shoved out wide and trying to create from there. And that's probably the weakest version of Toronto's attack.
Yes.
Right? So that's maybe what Seattle will be hoping to do.
Yep.
What else will Seattle be hoping to do?
Well, then I want to put a pin in what you just said, because I think that's a key part of what Seattle are going to be doing. But first, let's start with...
Let me tell you, I have a whole master plan. We talk about how Toronto play. Then we talk about how Seattle play, and then we put the two together, and that's when we have the interesting tactical conversation. So don't you worry, sir.
Well, I think it's just
we will come back.
What you just set up there is 1A of what leads to 1B in my how Seattle will attempt to play. So just keep that in your mind.
There's a pin through the middle of it.
But what I think we'll see from Seattle is a more standard 4-2-3-1.
Yeah,
with players kind of moving all over the place.
Okay, yeah, so I agree on the 4-2-3-1. I think I know the personnel. We'll maybe get into that in a minute.
Sure.
Here's how I see the shape of Seattle when they don't have the ball. So let's picture maybe Toronto have the ball. They have their back four pretty compact. It's pretty tightly knit together because you got Roman Torres and you got Chad Marshall, and they can head balls away all day. They can mostly throw a block in there. But what they can't be is exposed and have players running at them at pace. When you think those players are Josie and Giovinco, that's trouble, right? So you've got...
So clever, when you say they can't do that, you mean that's what Seattle does not want them to have to do, is be in a foot race
because it's their weakest part of their game, right? But if they can sit there at centre-back, have their fullbacks kind of tight next to them, and then have two defensive midfielders ahead of them, right? So it's probably, in my opinion, it'll be Svensson and it'll be Roldan ahead of them, then you're sort of really well protective if you're Seattle, right? Then, so you've got that defensive six block. Then ahead of them, you've got the four attackers, right? And we can talk about... I want to talk about the... what the attackers do when they're attacking, but I first want to talk about what they do when they're defending, and that is to close off all the angles.
Right.
I'm picturing it as Jovan Jones on the left, Nico Ledero on the right, and then Dempsey and Bruin as the sort of two more central attackers, maybe Dempsey just behind Bruin. But what they do is they don't come after you and try and get the ball. They just sort of like jog left and right and close down all your angles and try and force you wide and don't let you play through the middle.
Yep.
And once you do if you manage to get through the middle, get past them, then you hit the defensive midfielders and the tightly packed defense. And they make it really hard to break down.
Yep. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I think one of the few wrinkles you could see is Jovan Jones starting at left back as opposed to a left attacker.
So this is the big selection problem, right? Like, so in the first leg of the Houston game, it was who's the left back? I've forgotten his name. The left back's name is Nuhu. Yeah, Nuhu is the left back, and then it's Jovan Jones ahead of him. If Jordan Morris is fit, then you could have Jordan Morris as the left winger and Jovan Jones as the left back, which is where it's played. Victor Rodriguez is the other option. You could have him on the left and Jovan Jones at left back. I think it's safer to have Nuhu and Jovan Jones.
I think it absolutely is, because I think if you have Jovan Jones as a left back, that means you're playing a very attacking left back, and then you do have that vulnerability down the left side.
Plus, Jovan Jones is absolutely destroying people as a left winger. Right?
And so
he's been unstoppable the last couple of games.
So we can remove the pin, and I'll say, and I think that's why Seattle want him as that left-sided attacker, because I think they are going to try to do that thing where you force Bradley into passing it to the wide center backs. The point there being that if you've got a wide center back, that almost always means the wing back has pushed further forward. And if you can put that center back under pressure and force a turnover or intercept a pass, now you've kind of cut out those wing backs. Now you can really drive at that defense, which is spread and a little bit chaotic. And I think Jovan Jones thrives in that environment, and I think that's what they're going to try to do.
And I think he's in form as well, right? If he gets the ball, he looks really sort of confident, accelerating down the left, great at whipping in actual crosses to, say, Will Bruin's head, or like really smart low passes that go across the face of goal. And I can imagine like Dempsey being at the far post and side-footing it in. I think he's a real danger.
And I think he's a real danger for what you just, like the key thing there that you said, in my opinion, is that he's in form. And you really can't, like there was Bobby Warshaw, I think, wrote an article at the start of the playoffs about like what it's like to play a playoff game where
so
he's saying,
nervous,
like,
I can't tie my laces.
Exactly. Like you're just so full of adrenaline and nerves and everything else. But there are those players who seem to thrive off that, and I would say Jovan Jones is one, and I would say Will Bruin is one. That in these playoff games, it seems like he has just found his rhythm, found his confidence, and that cannot be underestimated. That you might think of Will Bruin as like, oh, he's a big guy, he's going to win headers. just don't let him get any service. But then you see the little moments of trickery and the very skillful moments, and you think maybe it's just a player who's very confident and is happy to go out there and try stuff and maybe doesn't feel as much pressure.
And I really think this front four of Seattle, Schmetzer has figured out a thing that works really
you mean
well.
Schmelzer?
I do not.
My watch corrected me.
Yeah, that works really. Yeah, it's like it works really well for Clint Dempsey.
You've been watching Caesar?
I think it absolutely gets the most out of Clint Dempsey to have this lineup of Will Bruin does like the target man and showing for the ball and the finishing stuff, right? Joevin Jones does the sort of accelerate down the left, I'm real dangerous, look out stuff. Nico Lodeiro does the sort of hard to take the ball off of, clever at finding space, really good at through balls stuff. So it's almost like there's a front three that's fully loaded and would scare anyone. And then Clint Dempsey is just in there to sort of contribute wherever he feels like. He can come deep and show just like Will Bruin can. He can thread some through balls just like Lodeiro. He hasn't really got the pace, but he can dribble at people just like Joevin Jones. It's almost like having those other three takes the pressure off Clint Dempsey to have to do any one specific thing and lets him just do basically whatever he feels like doing.
And that's the key point, because I think he is that veteran, and one of his biggest assets at this point is his just knowledge. He knows how to do stuff. And that seems...
It's like knowing the right hammer for this specific job.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. But like it's a thing that only...
The right tool. For me, it's always a hammer. Everything looks like nails to me.
You're a Bachman in Silicon Valley where he describes screws as nails with flair or whatever it is. But no, it's more so that like a veteran player plays the game differently, and that's very obvious. But what I mean by that is that they evaluate what a team is doing much faster than an inexperienced player or a player who's nervous. And I think like what we were talking about off air that I think I figured out in the course of this show is that I was talking about against Houston, we kept seeing Will Bruin and Clint Dempsey sort of behind the Houston back line, that they'd try to run onto a ball or the ball wouldn't come, and then they'd both be kind of offside and slowly walk back. And at the time I thought of that as like, well, that could be bad because then that leaves Seattle with two men out of the play. But what I think that actually was in retrospect was that Houston's backline in that game was so all over the place that I think they just kind of knew.
There were holes to run into?
They're not. Yeah, there's holes for us to run into. And also, if we're behind them, it did feel a little bit like Houston was just like out of sight, out of mind. They're not there anymore. And I think Clint Dempsey is the type of player who can see, oh, that center back is cheating right. I'm going to stay in this hole, or I'm going to exploit that opportunity. Yeah, like he is very good at finding those vulnerabilities
that Jones and Bruin and Lodeiro are causing. Speaking of, one of the big things, Matt Doyle always points this out, that Nico Lodeiro, if he plays on the right, he will drift inside and almost have a double attacking midfielder thing going on. Like him and Dempsey could be almost in the same spot. I think that could be the thing that causes trouble for Michael Bradley when he's defending, because Bradley is the shield in front of the back three. If he suddenly has Dempsey and Lodeiro to deal with, I see him in a bit of trouble.
I agree.
Yeah.
So then the question, because it feels like we're both sort of leaning towards Seattle have this one in the bag, is what it feels like where we are from this conversation.
So it seems to me that Toronto like to build, right? They like to play the ball at the back and build slowly and like work their way through you. And they have various ways of doing that, as we discussed earlier, right? To Altidore, to Vasquez, to the wingbacks. I think from the way I've seen Seattle defend, they are set up almost perfectly to make that as difficult as possible for Toronto. If you've got the front four closing down as many angles as possible, but then you've got two defensive midfielders being very disciplined and sitting behind, and you've got a back four behind them that's really compact and tight, it's really hard for me to see a way through for many Toronto passes.
So congratulations to Toronto for winning this game 15-0.
Yeah, it could easily go the other way.
Yes.
It could easily go the other way.
It could. So then what do we think? Well, do we want to do more on like how does this match up, or do we want to go into our predictions at this point?
Up to you, my friend.
Well, then I want to take us the obvious route and talk about strength of schedule. Okay. Because I think one thing that I've seen kind of consistently, I would say definitely from TFC supporters, is the idea that Seattle have had an easier time in the playoffs. They had San Jose in the second round.
TFC supporters are obviously super neutral.
Yeah, totally. That's my point, is more so that like I know Seattle fans might disagree, but Seattle had San Jose in the second round. Obviously, they had the first round bye, and then they had Houston, a very weakened Houston, particularly in the second leg. And so there is an argument to be made that, yes, a lot of what they've been doing looked incredibly impressive and looked really easy against those teams, but against Toronto, the best team in Major League Soccer this season, maybe things get slightly harder.
Yeah, so for example, like I remember being really impressed with how Bruin and Dempsey kept just coming and showing for passes. Like Seattle like to build out of the back as well, right? So the way Seattle are able to do that is Bruin and Dempsey will constantly be showing, Lodeiro will constantly be showing. Maybe that is easier to do against Houston than it is to do against Toronto's back three, plus Michael Bradley, plus like Delgado and Vasquez or whomever it may be. So yeah, I can definitely definitely see that. But that's why we're not expecting fireworks in this game, right?
Yeah, no, it is definitely why.
So yeah, they won't be able to treat Toronto like they treated Houston.
No, I would say probably not. What I will say, though, is that I've got some specific predictions for you.
Oh, now we're there. Okay.
I'm going to start with Toronto.
Okay.
And my specific prediction is that Toronto will have at least one orthodox attacking set piece and one unorthodox attacking set piece.
Please explain.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean master set piece theater, but what I mean is that obviously when you have Giovinco in shooting range on a free kick, which I think they will since he tends to get fouled, that's going to be a lethal opportunity, and so you're going to see an obvious set piece. The other thing I saw TFC do a couple different times in the playoffs is when they were in a position where it was like maybe just on the edge of shooting range, or it could have been like, let's get all the big guys in the box, we'll pump it in.
For a free kick?
They play really fast. They try to do a really quick restart, usually trying to play through the lines of like the defenders trying to keep their offside line. But when they're doing that initially, when they're just getting organized, there's some guys on the wall and everyone's kind of spreading out and seeing who their mark is. And I saw them on a number of occasions wait right until that happened and then play a quick through ball and just try to kind of take advantage of people not being quite set. And so I feel like not necessarily a master set piece designed a set piece, but just sort of like, oh, foul, 30 yards from goal, it's going to be, oh, they've already played it again. And then it's in and maybe you get a shout out.
A wiki set piece.
Yeah, exactly.
That raises an interesting point as well. You talked about them like wanting to spread Seattle. I think I talked in the start about how Seattle keep their defense nice and tight.
Yep.
Maybe one of the keys for Toronto, I don't have a prediction for this, but I think it's worth talking about. One of the keys for Toronto is if they get their wing-backs forward to try and pull out, Liedman and Nuhu, get them just spread away from Torres and Marshall, and then you maybe like expose the underbelly a little bit, and you can get like Giovinco and Altidore running at Torres or Marshall without the extra protection of the fullbacks.
Well, since you've already done that, I'll do my second specific prediction, and I will say that Jovan Jones will draw at least one yellow card and at least one dangerous set-piece chance.
How are those related? Is that related to what I just said?
It is, because I think the way that they'll be able to do that, pull Nuhu and Leerdam out of position, is by getting those wing-backs forward, so that then they have
Toronto's
to contend.
wing-backs.
Yes, so then they have to contend with Morrow and Beitashour and whoever else kind of drifts wide. But that leaves opportunities, as I talked about previously, for space in behind. And I think Jovan Jones has been the player that Seattle have looked to on that sort of fullbacks or wingbacks out of position, break down that wing. Obviously, Ladero is more than capable, but it's Jovan Jones who's done it consistently. And I could see him just getting cleaned out because all of a sudden it's a center back 50 yards from goal versus him on a breakaway 12 yards from goal.
Okay.
And so I see a player picking up a yellow card and Jovan Jones picking up a free kick in a dangerous position.
Okay. Let's go to my predictions
Sure.
then. I predict that Toronto FC will score from a free kick that is taken by Giovinco and won by Giovinco. Because I can see, if they do get the ball into Giovinco's feet, I don't think they'll do it as often as they want to, Toronto, but when they do, he'll be surrounded by Torres, Marshall, probably Roldan, Svensson. Maybe Ladero plays defensive midfield. That's one other option if they try and pull him back.
Maybe,
but he will be surrounded by bodies, and I think he will draw a foul because they'll be worried. Because you notice that a lot of Toronto goals tend to be not just Giovinco, but it's Giovinco and Josie and Vasquez playing these quick 1-2s at the top of the box and trying to cut you open. I think that stuff starts happening quickly, fouls get drawn, and I think you'll get a free kick in that sort of just top of the box thing, and I think it's going to be Giovinco beating a Stefan Fry, who's just back from injury.
I think at least
those hamstrings won't stretch far enough.
I mean, they stretched far enough last year. We'll see if they do this year. I think you're right in at least that there's going to be free kicks for Toronto, and I think a big part of that is because just having numbers in that area doesn't get the job done. It's having numbers for Seattle who know what they're doing.
Yeah,
and to your point,
they do.
No,
yeah,
absolutely. But people, I'm not saying Giovinco's Leo Messi, but it's something we've talked about before.
He's
which
the
is
Leo
like,
Messi of MLS.
Yeah, and Leo Messi though, like when you have him, there is that moment of like, oh, I don't know what to do, and either everybody stands off because they're scared, and that creates chances, or as often happens, everybody just tries to close him down, and that ends up with him getting kicked and fouled. And I could see that happening too.
Bonus prediction. Yeah, so Giovinco won't
I've got those two.
Giovinco won't get space to run at people, but he will be able to run at crowded bodies and draw a free kick, essentially. Bonus prediction, Michael Bradley will be in the referee's face.
Yep.
This is a running theme of the last few games. You see Bradley really he's the captain, so you get some leeway, but really yelling at the ref about what just happened and why that was or was not a free kick.
Yep.
I think we'll see that in the final because there has been a weird attitude change, right, of him kind of losing his temper a little bit.
I mean, when you get booed every place you go, I think that'll happen.
It might be part of it. It won't happen on Saturday because Toronto are hosting.
It will not.
Yeah,
He'll still probably get some boos
He's more
from
popular
the away
in
section.
Canada than in the United States.
Yep, I think that's probably true. I mean, it is the case that I think because it's a weird situation in which somehow Seattle, the current MLS champions, are the underdog. And I think part of that is because...
It's because Toronto have smashed teams all season long.
That's definitely part of it, but I think maybe it's like, I almost want to say like if you're the neutral, I have a feeling that people are probably pulling for Seattle, which is not something I would have expected, because last year I was definitely pulling for Toronto as like this, like the upstart Canadian team who are doing stuff, and I want to see them win. It could be great. And it just feels like because of what's happened with the U.S. national team and because of maybe what's happened in the playoffs, specifically that second leg against the Red Bulls, it just seems like people have soured a little bit on Toronto.
Absolutely. If this was, okay, I don't want to do the alternate timeline, but if the U.S. was going to the World Cup, if the U.S. were going to the World Cup, we would be all excited about Bradley and Altidore sort of finishing MLS 2017 with a trophy and like feeling good about going into 2018.
I think so.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
But that is not the timeline we're in. We're in the other one.
And so I think you're right that we're going to see Michael Bradley in people's face. My bonus prediction...
We're in the special series comic book edition.
Yeah.
Earth 2.
My bonus prediction is that both Josie Altidore and Clint Dempsey will be shown cursing on air. And like you won't necessarily hear it, but it will be very obvious because that has happened a lot in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I definitely... Maybe, again, this is that New York game filtering into my brain too much, but I could just definitely see that situation in which Dempsey gets fouled by Bradley and takes exception to it, or Dempsey gets cleared out, as Tyler Adams did by Giovinco, and when Dempsey gets up, he doesn't have that momentary, like, whoa, I'm getting yelled at by Josie Altidore. He goes right back at Altidore, in a way that Tyler Adams eventually did, just not right away.
We could very likely have a Bradley versus Dempsey showdown because Dempsey operates in that sort of just behind the striker attacking midfield area. Bradley is patrolling that area for Toronto. At the very least, there'll be some sort of 50-50 ball that Bradley will not go fully in on.
Yep.
Or we'll see them both go fully in on it, and we'll see what happens.
So we've talked a lot about Victor Vasquez being the key player for Toronto, but it really does, at the end of the day, feel like it's Michael Bradley.
Oh, absolutely,
because he's shielding that back line and does that job well, steps to the ball when he needs to, which we have seen him do. We've seen him be aggressive at times. We've just also seen him do, as you were just talking about, that sort of,
it's like,
show them one way, that's my job.
Right, I'm not going to go into this physically and win it. I'm instead going to use my brain and try and like show them this way, and we'll think our way out of this one. And often that does not work.
And I think if you want to know which one shows up, you'll know in the first 5 to 10 minutes, because I have a feeling you'll see him either back off a little bit or you'll see him step through somebody to win a ball, and that will tell you how aggressive he's going to be in the course of that final.
I just kind of had, this isn't necessarily related to this game, but I've just had a realization about Bradley, which is that he can be an incredible looking player when all his teammates are showing for him and giving him the option, right?
Yep.
He can find a pass, but if the pass isn't on, then what's he going to do? You don't often see him dribble his way out of trouble if he's in a tight space.
Prediction number 2 for me, bonus prediction, we'll see at least one Bradley ball over the top. And I don't mean and I don't mean a Bradley ball in terms of like Michael Bradley will play a long ball. I mean a capital B Bradley, capital B ball. That thing that he does where like he'll get the ball. We've seen this infinite number of times for the U.S. national team, where he'll like say Toronto have a throw in on the like touchline nearest to the camera. Throw in goes to Bradley. He takes that one touch and then just plays that like 50-yard ball wide onto the foot of one of his teammates.
Perfect diagonal.
I think we'll see a Bradley perfect diagonal ball in this game. We'll see at least one of those, because I think that's one thing he'll do is kind of start to distribute balls like as wide as possible, as fast as possible, to try to catch Seattle out.
Everybody calls him MB90 because he used to like go hard for 90 minutes. I think the thing to call him now is MB45.
Yep.
Not because of 45-minute halves, but because of 45-degree angles.
I like it.
All right, my Seattle prediction is Clint Dempsey, is going to score.
All right.
Because he missed the final.
So you're predicting goals.
He missed. I mean, at least I'm sort of spreading my bets. Missed the MLS Cup game last year, right? But kind of, there's this whole story of he feels like he wants to be on the field and win the trophy for Seattle. I really think the team is set up for him to succeed in whichever way he chooses, because of what I talked about earlier with Bruin doing the thing and Ladero and Jones do all the other things. Then Dempsey just like can choose which area he's going to attack. I can see Will Bruin also in super form. So I'm saying Will Bruin assist to Clint Dempsey goal. In whatever way that is. It could be on the floor. It could be a Bruin knockdown for Dempsey. It could be a flick on. It could be a through ball. Bruin will assist Dempsey and he'll score.
I think knockdown
I love
is
that
most
partnership.
likely.
Yeah, it probably is, right?
I'll go back to basics with Will Bruin and say, a knockdown header to Clint Dempsey to volley home is probably your most likely option there.
Any final thoughts on this game?
I do have one, but it ties in with today's second sponsor of the day, which is Fucci.
All right.
Makers of the highly engineered soccer rebounder. We love Fucci. We've played it many times. Our YouTube channel will attest to that.
Yes, it will.
We've played it for better or for worse is how I'm going to put that one.
In the heat and in the cold.
I think we once played it so poorly that we turned that one into a video about how not to play Fucci.
I forgot that wasn't the original idea.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
We changed it halfway
through. I think it was one where we have to get a rally going, and we both just kept making obvious mistakes because then we were thinking about it and trying not to.
Yeah.
And then that became, you know what, let's just film us making stupid
genuinely
mistakes.
helpful, though. I don't make those same mistakes now, right? It's kind of like Johan Cruyff. Before I make that mistake, I don't make that mistake.
Yes. Yes, but as we talked about, Fucci is the rebounder. It's the bounce back champion.
It's the bounce back machine.
So we want to know who's going to be the bounce machine in this game, as in who could come into this game and give it some bounce, have an impact from the bench.
My obvious choice is Jordan Morris.
Okay.
So there's no way. I want to nail this to the wall. There's no way Jordan Morris starts, right? He's only recently back from injury. He played, 15 minutes in the second leg of the Houston game. His first touch was outside of the right foot, directly to a Houston defender. And also, it's a big gamble. When you've got Jovan Jones playing so well on that left wing, which I assume is where Morris would play, it's a big gamble to start someone who's only just back from injury. It's more like, if needed, it's an extra piece we can throw on to shake things up towards the end, right? So Jordan Morris could be coming off the bench having a great 20 minutes.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
I am going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to say Raheem Edwards coming on for Toronto.
Interesting.
Because he's got that pace and that ability to play wide, that if...
To be a replacement wing-back, essentially.
Basically, yeah. If Seattle are really shutting down Toronto's options and Toronto really struggling to get either any sort of counterattack going or any sort of wide play going, I could see Raheem Edwards coming in and having that immediate impact, especially against a tired Seattle. If it stretches late, if it's 0-0 in the 80th, or if they go into extra time, then I think that's where we could see Raheem Edwards come in and shine for Toronto.
So the players that could add some bounce to this game, Jordan Morris and Raheem Edwards.
Yes, and if people want to add bounce to their game by playing Fucci, they can do so with a discount, Daryl Grove.
Certainly can. You can add some bounce to your holidays,
there we go.
I would say, because there's already a holiday discount at playfucci.com. It's $50 discount for the holidays. You can add another $20.17 off if you use the discount code TSS2017. TSS 2017 for an extra $20.17 off a Fucci rebounder.
And Daryl, I don't know if you knew this or not, but you know where a link will be to that product?
In the cloud.
Also in the show notes. I think in the cloud. I think that's how the cloud works, right? If it exists, it's in the cloud too.
Probably, yeah. Link will be in the show notes. Before we move on, there is one final player I wanted to talk about from this game.
Sure.
Apologies. I think he's a man that gets overlooked a little too much. And rewatching Seattle, I saw more of sort of why he's overlooked, but why he's so important. Can you guess?
Is it Gustav Svensson?
No, it's his partner.
Christian Roldan.
Roldan. So we talked about Roldan before about how he moves around position for Seattle. It seems to me he is most effective next to a defensive midfielder like Svensson, where he does a defensive midfielder job. He'll win some tackles. He'll step out and close people down. But he's also the link man in terms of stopping Seattle being just like a back six of 4 defenders, 2 defensive midfielders, and a front 4. Christian Roldan, to me, is the guy who can get forward a little bit and provide that connecting pass that is kind of unnoticed because it's not flash. You know what I'm saying? It's just a quick ball into the feet of Bruin or Dempsey or Ladero or Jones or whomever. But it's the absolutely most important thing to be that link between defense and attack and to do a bit of both.
He's like the second viewing player that you probably don't notice him live because it is that really simple pass. But then after the fact, it's like, oh, where did that goal come from? And you go back 30 seconds and it's a Christian Roldan very simple pass to start the attack.
And it'll be more like Roldan shaded someone towards Svensson. Svensson put in a tackle, the ball popped loose. Roldan just like maybe beat 2 people with a pass that went to Dempsey. Dempsey does a turn. And then off we go. But the actual highlight reel, that even if it makes it to Reddit or the show at MLSsoccer.com, it will start with the Dempsey turn.
Well, if there are goals for Seattle, we'll definitely have to go back and review them to see if Christian Roldan is involved in triggering that play. And if there are any goals, and even if there aren't, we'll be back, as you said, on Sunday to review the MLS Cup 2017 final. I'm going to put it that way. Why not?
Final reminder, it is 4 o'clock Eastern is the listed time. I think there's a 21-minute Frozen featurette plays before.
So kickoff, so it's, what'd you say, 4 p.m.? So kickoff is at 7:30 at night.
And it's going to be on ESPN.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll be back to review that.
We will indeed. But before we finish up today, Dale Grove, we've got several scouting reports to get to.
Does that mean you haven't counted them so you don't know exactly how many?
There are 14.
Oh, okay.
Shot in the dark. I have no idea.
Well, we're going to find out. All right. So, who's up first, Tyler? Who are we scouting?
There are 13. Shoot. Kyle McElhinney scouting Renato Sanchez, 20-year-old Portuguese midfielder on loan at Swansea from Bayern Munich.
This is a long one.
It is, but it's great.
Okay.
Sort of. Not for Sanchez. Just a great report.
Worth reminding everybody, I don't know if this is in the report, Renato Sanchez started in the Euro 2016 final as a teenager. He's a Euro 2016 champion.
That is not in there, but it's good context. Sanchez's up and down loan at Swansea continues. In recent games, he has been Swansea's midfield engine, but that hasn't done much to dissuade his critics. The BT Sports pundits referred to his performance as woeful, questioned why he's failed to lift the quality of the entire Swansea side, suggested that if he were an academy kid that he would never be heard from again, and even took the time to besmirch the quality of the entire Bundesliga.
Wow.
The BT Sport pundits, whoever they may be. Unfortunately, says Kyle, a few days later against Chelsea, Sanchez did little to improve this perception as he received the ball near midfield, picked up his head, and passed directly to the Carabao logo on a hoardings board to his left.
To be fair, the Carabao logo, I think, is the same colour as Swansea's jerseys, so he just looked up, peripheral vision, is I can hit that pass.
Sure. Manager Paul Clement could only hold his head in his hands in response to the errant pass and then subbed off Sanchez at halftime. Sanchez started on the bench in this weekend's game against Stoke City, coming on in the 85th minute of a 2-1 loss.
I'll say this is possibly good news for me because I'm pretty sure Wolves drew Swansea in the FA Cup.
That's good for you.
Yeah.
That's definitely good for you, unless it means that Renato Sanchez gets to start there because they've got to find some way to build his confidence back up.
Could be Sanchez versus Neves.
I would say based on Wolverhampton's form, that is not a game to build his confidence because that seems like it's going to be a tough one.
I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Bottom of the Premier League versus top of the Championship is not a big gap.
Only one place separates them. Up next, Colin Marshall is scouting Conrad de la Fuente, the 16-year-old American forward for Barcelona Juvenil B. Colin says Conrad provided 3 assists against Badalona. Are they Barcelona's evil twin?
I was wondering.
Against Badalona.
I did not check to see if that was a typo.
And was a consistent threat throughout the match. It's Barcelona with an evil beard.
Of course. Goatee, yeah.
Colin adds that De La Fuente was last called to the US youth national teams in October of 2017.
Guy Jedwab scouting Serge Gnabry, the 22-year-old German wide forward on loan at Hoffenheim from Bayern Munich.
The German Wayne Rooney.
Indeed. You've read this time. Gnabry finally got his first goal for Hoffenheim and finished with a brace in a 4-0 victory over RB Leipzig. The first was a straightforward goal as he received a long ball over the top to get one-on-one with the goalkeeper, but the second was a lob over the keeper from almost midfield. Both goals came through the center rather than out on the wings, showing that Julian Nagelsmann, the Hoffenheim manager, is indeed converting Gnabry from a winger to more of a striker.
This was quite the chip.
Yep.
Quite the chip. I saw it on Fox Sports, I think. Okay, Chris Fujimoto is scouting Jonathan Amon. I've been hoping we'd hear about this. The 18-year-old American left winger at FC Nordsjælland. If you're wondering how he got to FC Nordsjælland, it's an interesting story. Go listen to last week's Top Drawer Soccer show. Travis Clark and I have the full details on how this kid from, I want to say, South Carolina ends up in Denmark.
Credit to Chris for trying to give us abbreviations for all the teams involved. I removed those abbreviations. Good luck, Daryl. Actually, it's really, as long as you can say Nordsjælland, you're fine.
There we go.
Yeah.
So Chris says, Jonathan Amon played 73 minutes for FC Nordsjælland in a 3-1 win over Copenhagen. Amon was involved in Nordsjælland's second goal, providing the assist to Emiliano Marcondes. He showed a nice mix of speed and strength to beat his defender and square the ball to a waiting Marcondes. I saw this goal on Twitter. It's really good. It is. I think he really takes the defender by surprise. He just sort of takes off, hits the end line, cuts it back. Classic wing play that I love.
I approve.
Chris says that's 2 starts in a row for Amon and 2 wins for Nordsjælland. Amon equals wins. #math.
Correct. Katie Sutton scouting Katie Cousins, 21-year-old American midfielder for the University of Tennessee. Katie had a big week. She racked up postseason honors and then had surgery. She was named to the United Soccer Coaches Southeast Region team.
United Soccer Coaches is the new name for the used to be the NCAA coaches. So it used to be NSCAA.
Yes.
Now it's United Soccer Coaches.
There we go. Thank you for that.
Good rebrand, I would say.
Also named to the 3rd team All-American team. This was in addition to being named to the All-SEC first team earlier this year. On a less exciting note, Cousins had surgery this week on her left ankle or foot. No word on what the injury was, but social media indicates she's in good spirits and watching lots of movies.
As you should do when you've got a leg injury.
Except I think it's the exam period, so maybe that speaks to... If you compete in the NCAA tournament, maybe you get a little bit of time off from the University of Tennessee.
You get to skip finals if you make some finals.
Sure.
John Fernandez is scouting Borja Mayoral, the 20-year-old Spanish striker for Real Madrid. John says Borja had his best game in a Real Madrid shirt in the second leg of Real's Copa del Rey match against Segunda B side Fuenlabrada, with Mayoral netting a brace in a 2-2 draw.
This is as much a Gareth Bale scouting report as it is Borja Mayoral.
Gareth Bale subbed on in the 62nd minute after a 2-month layoff, and with his first touch set up Mayoral for a point-blank header, which he eventually went in. I'd like to see the route it took. His second goal was even more confusing. 3 Fuenlabrada players somehow didn't mark Bale and even passed the ball to him, and while Bale's effort was saved, Mayoral picked up the rebound, slammed it home for the second goal. Yes, a 2-2 draw at home to a Segunda B side is embarrassing, but with the 2-0 lead from the earlier leg, Real Madrid easily make it to the round of 16.
All right, Zach Lippert scouting Izzy Brown, 20-year-old English attacker on loan at Brighton and Hove Albion from Chelsea. Brown made his first start since the 2-0 loss to Arsenal, which was in Week 7. And first appearance
it didn't go well, did it? Because
I saw this game. And first appearance on the left wing since the opening day loss to Man City, which would have been in Week 1. He looked dangerous and put in several dangerous crosses that could have helped Brighton jump out to an early lead against Liverpool. Instead, they eventually lost 5-1.
Mike Spinelli is scouting George Bello, the 15-year-old American left-back at Atlanta United. Future US left-back, I'm going to say. Mike says that...
Anthony Robinson would like a word with you about that.
I mean, there are 2 futures. There's the near-term future and the long-term future. Yeah, the US Under-17s finished bottom of the table in the Nike friendlies, says Mike. Bello played the second half of their 5-1 defeat to the Netherlands and played the entire match in their 1-1 draw with Brazil, coming up with a key defensive stop in front of goal against the tournament champions. Didn't you talk US Under-17s on your Top Draw Soccer Show episode?
I did.
This week?
Out tomorrow, yes.
Oh, it's not out yet.
If you're listening to this Tuesday. If not, then it should be out.
Okay.
Ira Jersey scouting Ashley Sanchez, 18-year-old American attacker for UCLA. Last week, Ashley was one of 3 UCLA players named to the U20 women's national team 24-player roster for the Nike Friendlies. Ira says that's definitely a good thing, given that if the selection process had taken place after the College Cup semifinals and final, things might have been different.
Why?
She played a total of 129 minutes across both games, but managed only 2 shots, both off target. She may have been nursing an injury, but, as I would say, evidently, not great. Yeah, I would say that.
Not great, Bob. Not great. Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, the 21-year-old American midfielder for AFC Bournemouth. Oh, there hasn't been an update for a while because of injury. In late November, Hyndman went the distance and took all the free kicks in a U23 win over Brentford. Later that week, he had an assist for the Bournemouth reserves in a 3-0 win over MK Dons, a.k.a. the British Austin Texans. After the goal, Hyndman tore off his jersey to show he was sporting a Save the Crew t-shirt. Richie continues, I can't wait until Emerson gets transferred and I have something more exciting to write.
Patrick Keeler scouting a player that Daryl doesn't rate, Anthony Robinson.
No, rate him high.
20-year-old American left back on loan at Bolton from Everton, formerly the future left back, but Daryl says no. Anthony played 90 as Bolton beat Barnsley 3-1 and moved out of the relegation zone in a match where his teammate scored a goal and had an assist. Local writers discussed Anthony as the man of the match. He was very good defensively, leading the game with 6 interceptions, 6 clearances, and 2 tackles.
Go on, Anthony Robinson. Katie Bocinek is scouting Timothy Fosu-Mensah, TFM, the 19-year-old Dutch defender on loan at Crystal Palace from Man United.
For now.
Katie says Man United are considering recalling Fosu-Mensah in January as he appears to have been benched by new Palace boss Roy Hodgson. Reports indicate he will be loaned out somewhere else, not kept at United.
Final report of the day, Jonathan Holmgren.
Shocking. I thought Fosu-Mensah was doing really well for Palace.
I think he was doing well for a Palace team that were very bad. Okay. And I think when maybe Roy Hodgson switched things up a little bit, maybe Fosu-Mensah wasn't quite good enough to start at center back, but not quite enough good enough to be a starting right back either. So maybe he just got lost in the shuffle.
All right.
We shall see. Jonathan Holmgren scouting Alex Iwobi. Final report: the 21-year-old Nigerian attacker for Arsenal. That's the final report of the day, not of Alex Iwobi's career. Jonathan recently began following Iwobi on Snapchat and was therefore able to see him watch the World Cup draw live with his friends and family. They were all pretty thrilled about Nigeria's draw in Group D and seemed confident that Nigeria would do well against Argentina, Croatia, and Iceland.
All right.
Confidence.
Confidence. This is the confidence of youth, right? Remember talking on that show about how Nigeria has a young team? Mm-hmm. So they might be all about let's go get it.
13, I've confirmed. 13 scouting reports. I wanted to double check just to be safe.
Well, thank you to Kyle, Colin, Guy, Chris, Katie, John, Zach, Mike, Ira, Richie, Patrick, Katie, and Jonathan.
There weren't even any 2 people scouting 1 player, so that then I could say it was 14. No ways to get around this one.
Carl McElhinney's was long, so maybe that counts for 2.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Long but good.
Yes.
Long but good. Thank you, Kyle, for the Renato report.
And thank you to everybody else for sending in those reports.
Yeah.
We love getting the details on the players that haven't played in a while, but just any moments then instead of Like, still not playing. I liked hearing what they're up to on Instagram and Snapchat. Why not?
And, of course, Emerson Hindman, future of the US midfield. I called him Hindman.
You did.
Mispronunciating.
You did.
Future of the US midfield, I'm all about Emerson Hindman updates.
It's him and Josh Sargent, right? Those
Yes.
are the two?
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
Woltrap?
They
And
all
also
are.
Kellen Acosta?
They all potentially
and Paxton
are.
Pomykal?
Yes. Keep naming them.
Okay.
Jesus Ferreira?
Sure.
Thank you to everybody who submitted reports. Thank you to everybody who has recently joined the Scouting Network. If you'd like to do so, it's TotalSoccerShow.com/join. If you'd like to scout a player, click Active Scout. If you are waiting on your player, email me, Darryl@TotalSoccerShow.com. Let me know and I'll get you your player. If you'd like to just support the show and not scout, you still go to TotalSoccerShow.com/join. Choose Silent Scout from the drop-down menu. We won't assign you a player, but you will be supporting our endeavours here at Total Soccer Show Towers.
Indeed, which we always appreciate.
Of course we do. Of course we do. All right, Taylor, so thank you, sir, for taking the time. I keep calling you sir because you're so well dressed.
I am very fancy.
Taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy. And quick note for people who might be wondering, I think we're going to be doing a Champions League thumbs up, thumbs down review, but that's not going to be until after all the final group stage games are complete.
Late Wednesday afternoon.
Exactly.
Late Wednesday afternoon. And then, of course, more Total Soccer Show later in the week.
I believe that is correct.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.